Rob, who's been in the CBD industry with me since the beginning. And Doc Rob is a master formulator. He's a naturopath doctor. He's presenting on functional mushrooms. So Doc Rob is also a radio show host. You can reach him on Cannabis Radio on his show, which is Concierge for Better Living. He is an expert on cannabis and has written multiple books on the topic. So Doc Rob, take it away.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with everyone today, and sorry I had to join late, had some other things going on, but I'm happy to share. I love the whole cannabis talk. I love the education, and I really love what Dr. Manuel was saying about us all working together, learning from each other. That's always our purpose. And so even when the term expert comes out, it's always a hesitation for me because I'm always learning. I'm always hoping to gain more insight. So I'm always a student, and that's something that I think a lot of the professionals and other guests today feel in common. And I see a lot of people going from cannabis now, and we're starting to recognize other natural medicines. And in that category, definitely mushrooms, fungi come into play. This is an interesting conversation, and I'm happy to be able to bring today an introduction, because there's no way we can go into the depth of fungus and mushroom potential applications in this short period of time. So for my goal today, I just wanted to give us a little bit of understanding and overview, at least how I look at it. When we talked about cannabis and plant medicines, and I automatically want to go, oh, it's a plant medicine. And I'm like, but wait a second. First, let's talk about the classification of fungi or mushrooms. In the kingdom world, we have everything from bacteria and microorganisms, and then we have kingdom fungi separate from kingdom plantae or plant, and then kingdom animalia, which is the animal kingdom. So it has its own classification, its own kingdom, and I think that's really important, because even when I talk about, as a naturopath, using plant medicines and having a plant medicine category, while we think mushrooms fits into that, it's kind of a little bit of a nuance there as far as a different kingdom. But in that, mushroom or fungi kingdom, there's over 12,000 species worldwide, with about 2,000 of them to be reported edible. Right now we see, research is showing about 35 to 40 of these edible mushroom species are grown commercially, and a lot of them are wild. And again, for me, just like cannabis, mushrooms have been used for thousands of years in various cultures, very popular in traditional Chinese medicine and Asian cultures. So there's a lot of different opportunities to incorporate mushrooms on a daily basis. The yeast, people say, when I was getting into digestive health initially, and the docs can attest to this, Candida albicans, a yeast, kind of fits into that fungi category. It's not a beneficial one. It's actually more of a parasite type of a fungus that helps that robs nutrients from our body that our body is trying to absorb from our diet, and has other various stress factors on the body. So we can say that, there's many good mushrooms out there, but there's fungi and there's classifications that aren't always beneficial to our health. So there's even a term, fungophobia, which is a fear of mushrooms or toadstools. I think that there's also something that people talk about is edible and poisonous, versus food, mushrooms that might be edible but unpalatable. And this comes back into my culinary background. After I became a doctor, a naturopathic doctor, I went to culinary schools working on vegan and plant-based and natural culinary recipes, healing recipes, definitely focusing on improving digestive health. I just had a meeting last week with one of my mentors, Donna Gates from Body Ecology Diet. She taught us so much about fermenting foods properly and the liberation of nutrients. So I had a lovely dinner and some time. I got to bring home some of my own cultured veggies from her own fridge, which is the best gift I can get. So this is something that, we look at, there's a lot of applications when it comes to food and culinary. That's where I lean first, because most people are familiar with mushrooms, button mushrooms and oyster mushrooms, or in the culinary, get into the porcini mushrooms and the flavors of these things. but they're good in fiber, they're low in fat, they're good nutritiously, and many of these mushrooms we'll talk about have a lot of compounds, aside from the vitamins and minerals, that are beneficial to our health, support our immune system, and that includes vitamin D, you know, a form of vitamin D that's bioavailable to us, which is very important in these days with immune system concerns. You know, these are things that I look at. It's a great vegan meat alternative. I've been making portobello, you know, kind of steaks and portobello burgers for so long. There are mushrooms now that have been used for many years. Most people probably have heard of as a coffee alternative these days. So for those that are staying away from the coffee bean, there are Ganoderma. There's other mushroom companies that have made a mushroom coffee. This has been around for, you know, for so long, and then we start to see how. So I break down the mushroom categories into three main functional areas. They're culinary, functional, and then psychedelic, or, you know, in that therapeutic model. And there's some overlap, to be honest with you, more so in the functional and culinary side than the functional and psychedelic, but there's a little bit of that crossover in these areas. And while I will focus today, and I'll get into some of the key aspects of functional mushrooms, which I adore, and I've been speaking about for almost 20 years now, so this is not a topic that has come up of late of interest. You hear a lot of people that have been in the cannabis industry now drawing into and jumping into psychedelics, specifically a lot of mushrooms and psilocybin and psilocin benefits, great treatments for depression and anxiety. There's a lot of opportunities here, end-of-life treatments. We've just, I don't know if you've heard out there that Canada just approved, there were 4 patients terminally ill that were requesting access to psilocybin psychedelic mushrooms for as an end-of-life therapy or treatment, and they were approved by Health Canada. Thankfully, this is something that this is natural, this is beneficial. You hear a lot of people today microdosing or taking small amounts of psychedelic mushrooms and having dramatic change. This is great for PTSD and those people that are suffering from some of those conditions. But I want to make clear that, you know, for me personally, I've said, been doing mushrooms and working with mushrooms for over 20 years. I remember when I was out there lecturing about 18 years ago for a small company at that time called Garden of Life, which most of you have probably heard about now. We had a formula called RM10 that I was teaching about the benefits, the immune properties, the stamina supporting, stress supporting benefits of mushrooms 18 years ago. So as much as we see this trend of people from cannabis going into mushrooms or psychedelics, that's not for everyone. And it's also, there's common sense. These are natural, they're not synthetic, they're grown in nature, and they're ways that cultures have used for thousands of years that we can learn from and apply into today's scientific model. There's more research being done now. More research needs to be done. This is something that's just going to be continuous to grow. I think that of all the psychedelics, and I'm very active in the psychedelic community. I'm a founding board member here in Florida of Mr. Psychedelic Law, which is a nonprofit designed to help promote education and legalization of psychedelics, starting with mushrooms and psilocybin. I've been working with a company and consulting on, there's some really great companies coming out in the mushroom space. Some of them I see doing it really right. For one example, Midocin is one of them. I think they're looking at the functional side at the same time, looking at the psychedelic side and the therapeutic side, medically speaking. So there's a lot of different ways that the industry is going to grow. But in the health food industry, in the natural product industry, when you go to Whole Foods or vitamin shops, we've had functional mushrooms for many, many years. One of the things that I talk about when people start getting into functional mushrooms, like almost any supplement out there that you'd want to consume, is the quality, you know, and bioavailability. How does it get put into your body, and how do you absorb it? And that's one of the key things with mushrooms that people have to recognize, is that mushrooms come with this outer layer, this chitin. It's a fibrous, kind of like cellulose on plants, and it's very hard for us as humans to digest. And so a lot of people have taken, maybe recreational, experimentally, or even medically, psychedelic mushrooms or eat mushrooms, and they have a hard time. Their stomach doesn't react very well. They have a digestive issue because of this. So it's very important to look at that and see the challenges of digestibility. We're seeing some more fermented mushroom products. We're seeing some extracted mushroom products, and extraction processes are often hot water extraction or hot ethanol extractions. There are some new technologies now, as I said, as the industry gains more acceptance and interest, we see more extraction and more technologies coming to bear, more formulations coming to market. It's really exciting to see the potential here, because for so long there's only been that small group of mushroom advocates, and now we're starting to see this take a hold. So it's really kind of neat to see how that works, but bioavailability and digestibility is really, really key. You know, the fact that that fiber is hard to digest, it actually acts as a prebiotic. So those people that have a healthy digestive flora, that microcosm of bacteria in the gut, or are taking beneficial bacteria probiotics as a supplement, or including it like Donna does, and we teach with our cultured veggies and our homemade yogurts and things of that nature, and our fermented coconut waters. The fiber from mushrooms act as a prebiotic, basically food for these good bacteria. And we see some of the other sources of this come from exoskeletons. One of the other areas that fiber, just as a mention, crickets and insects are becoming popular as a dietary alternative. Cricket protein or cricket fiber powder in supplements is becoming much more popular, and they're seeing it as a sustainable food and nutrition source for large populations as we grow as a society on a global level. So it's interesting to understand how we can not say, oh, it's hard to digest, but how we can use it to our benefit as well. I'm running fast only because there's a lot of information. I'm trying to give you as much as I can. Please definitely submit questions, or I'm happy to answer those. Just for example, the amount of fiber per 100 grams of mushrooms, in button mushrooms is 1 gram, shiitake is 2.5 grams, oyster mushrooms 2 grams, and morels is 2.8 grams. Culinary-wise, we've had this as part of our diet: chanterelles, as I said, porcinis, and of course, the very expensive truffles, which are subterranean mushrooms or fungi. They don't really pop, and so they need those pigs or hogs that sniff them out. But those are black truffles and truffle oil. As a chef and a culinary, that's a delicacy, a high-end, exquisite gourmet ingredient. Tastes amazing. If you ever had truffle French fries, you know what I'm talking about. It elevates the dish, but these are things that have been around in different cuisines and different cultures for so long. And like, I made a dish last night. I sauteed some vegetables up, and I had some nice shiitakes in there, because not only are they tasty, but they give that meaty texture, but they add a lot of nutrients as well. It's interesting also that we have a lot of other beneficial compounds, polysaccharides, beta-glucans, some healthy minerals, glycosides, some terpenoids. You hear terpenes and terpenoids in cannabis, but there are terpenoids in mushrooms, tocopherols, flavonoids, carotenoids, enzymes, and so all cool beneficial properties, and they help with immune support. They've been shown to have anti-tumor properties, help with liver function, anti-cholesterol or hypercholesterol for that matter, antibacterial, antifungal properties, antiviral, anti-diabetic, health promoting. I mean, all these benefits that we see in these things that grow all over the place, grow wild. So we have to learn now, this is a part of our all learning curve, how to incorporate more mushrooms into our diet healthily. And then, of course, if we're looking at supplementation, that's always a nice way to get the benefit of these compounds in a concentrated format. Again, talk to those manufacturers, figure out, ask how they're extracting, because bioactivity and absorption is key. There's a compound, it's a sterol that's in the cell membranes of the fungi. It helps to maintain the integrity. It's ergosterol or ergosterol. This is a precursor to vitamin D. And they can actually have shown that when they've exposed, like portobellos, to sunlight, it increases the vitamin D in the mushroom. So you could actually get good mushrooms and get some good vitamin D or compounds of precursors of vitamin D2 by eating these mushrooms. And I've seen really a movement towards mushroom supplements promoting the benefits of a natural absorbable vitamin D level. So a lot of great compounds. So some of the more popular ones, as I mentioned, Ganoderma in the coffee is reishi. It's also known as lingzi in China. Been part of Chinese medicine for over 2,000 years. So, excuse me. Longevity, spirituality. It's like an adaptogen, helps you manage stress, support healthy sleep. it's just one of those things that is great everyday supplement, whether it be in a diet form or a supplement form. Other ones, chaga. I remember growing up in upstate New York, and we had birch tree out in our backyard, and we had these mushrooms growing off the birch tree, and we were like, what is growing on that? Well, it happened to have been chaga, and this chaga mushroom is amazing, especially with stamina and endurance. And I have a chaga, big chaga, ground chaga in my tea cabinet. I sometimes steep it in water and make chaga tea. So try to incorporate it in those forms. I've always said what works for you. That's the key. They're now starting to get, some of these compounds that come from that chaga plant are great. Triterpenoids, antibacterial, antiviral properties, anti-HIV, malaria. So there's some really good natural defense properties that find in these plants. Cordyceps mushrooms, super popular. There's a couple different types of cordyceps mushrooms, been growing for thousands of years. These are the tonics for energy, vitality, endurance, and stamina, good health and immune system. This has been heralded by the royalties and ancients in China and Asia because of these properties. Cordyceps militaris is another one that's been shown to be supporting libido and anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. So many great properties. And again, not to say for one individual compound, I used a bunch of mushrooms when my mom was sick with cancer. It's a really great adjunct with chemotherapy and other cancer therapies to incorporate mushrooms and immune boosting mushrooms for sure. But at the same time, again, how much are we consuming? This is not to say it's meant to treat just disease, but the key here, especially as a naturopath, is incorporate into your lifestyle, into your diet now when you're well, to promote wellness and maintain health so you don't ever get sick. That's really the key here through education and health promotion, is learn tools and tips to keep healthy, stay healthy, avoid the dis-ease that may occur in your body, and promote that immune support. And this is, of course, in today's time with immune system challenges and added stress, it's really key to incorporate immune proper steps. So lion's mane is another one I used often, helps with focus and concentration and memory. Very beneficial for a large population, from students to elderly. As I mentioned earlier, shiitake mushrooms are probably the most common. Superfood with their vitamins and minerals. It's known to contain 9 amino acids essential to our body, good for hair and skin. Turkey tail is another one that I've used. Good in teas. It's good prebiotic. Maitake is also another great one. So you see that many of these you probably have heard about in different forms. So even like lion's mane, if you look on a label, it may say Hericium arenaceus, or however put the Latin is not my specialty, but that's lion's mane. And so Coriolus versicolor may be on a label, but that's turkey tail. So we're learning these languages, both their Latin name as well as their more common name. And of course, there's probably those names as well been used popularly in Asia for so long. So tremella is another one that's very popular. It's good to fill in some nutrition gaps. It's a great source of vitamin D. It's probably the most natural source of vitamin D on any food on the planet, as well as having fiber and antioxidants. So again, this is I'm just giving you a spectrum here on these functional herbs. When we talked about RM10 18 years ago, we had a blend of 10 different mushrooms and cordyceps in a formula, giving you a wide range of benefits. I will say, though, that some people do have allergies to it, like everything. Some people have allergies to cannabis even. As I also mentioned earlier, you have upset stomach. Some people have some concerns with mushrooms and interactions with some medications, blood pressure, diabetes, and blood thinning medications. This is something, again, whenever you're taking a supplement, whenever you're adding some into your diet, if you have pre-existing conditions or you have some concerns, that's where you talk to your primary health professional. That's where you talk to your experts. These are things that really, there's information out there. Like I said, there's been research for thousands of years, and we're doing more so now. And a lot of the studies, as I said, are coming into both treatment on the psychedelic side, for the most part, is in anxiety, depression, and PTSD, end of life care, of course. But there's also, I think, the main focus today will be immune system boosting. And I think that for everyone, immune system, the beta glucans, the vitamin D, having a good store of minerals in your body, these are all ways and tools to keep yourself healthy. And I think that, there's a lot of different needs for that immune boost. People have different reasons. But today, I think having a good blended supplement formula with mushrooms in it is somewhat of a no-brainer today. I think that we have it's a great category. It's a natural category. There's non-synthetic components involved. It adds those extra benefits of the fiber and prebiotic food. So I think that for many people today, I think incorporating that. And then when you take something like CBD, for example, and starting to see this more and more, as I'm laughing because all my allergies from just being outside are itching me. But the combination of these cannabinoids with some of these compounds found in mushrooms, these beneficial compounds in these functional mushrooms, we see this emergence. Now, I've been in natural products, like I said, for over 20 years, and you've seen categories and different ingredient profiles get popular at different times. But over the last, 5 or so, 10 years, when you see this movement towards just these natural alternatives, these herbal remedies, these plant-based formulations, and now these fungal-based incorporations to your diet or your supplement protocols, I just think it's great. And I think that we're seeing more of that population shift to the natural, whether it be in the kingdom, plantae or kingdom fungi, it doesn't really matter. They're in that natural state, and even beneficial bacteria, probiotics. We're starting to incorporate that system of healing through the natural order that I think will benefit everybody. And especially if you could do it through dietary changes is always a plus. So I gave that kind of overview on the mushrooms. I think over time and further conversations and conferences, we can dive even more details on the more receptors and those type of things. But I think that for a lot of people, just getting some of the basics is looking how the product is extracted, understanding which mushrooms are in the formulas and how you're using them. Try to incorporate them more into your daily diet. Utilize the prebiotic benefits of the fiber. I mean, elimination's key. People get rid. We talk about digestive health. It's always not about what you put in your body or in your mouth. It's how you eliminate it and get it out of your body. And a lot of people, especially when I was working with in practice with a lot of women specifically. Yep, there it is. We've talked about this on previous conversations, is that no one wants to talk about constipation. No one wants to talk about challenges with elimination. But if you don't eliminate your body's toxins, when your liver breaks down, especially those hormones, those when they don't get eliminated, you're only going to get them recirculated back in the body, and then they act up in a whole nother challenge to your system. So this is how our body is designed. This is really basic physiology. That's what I love about this stuff. We're not trying to get too deep and too complicated because it don't need to for good health. And for everyone out there, that's what you have, a great audience. You have a great group of panelists, and I hope this gave you some good introduction, which was my purpose today, to this mushroom conversation that's only going to continue. I will make a comment to say that while they say, is this going to be the same thing, psychedelics to cannabis? There's a difference, because psychedelics is a category, cannabis is a plant, right? So you may have, hemp varieties and, non-hemp varieties, but psychedelics includes LSD, MDMA. We're seeing a lot of treatments now with ketamine, which has been, I'm seeing amazing results with, therapeutically guided, physician-guided ketamine treatments for depression and anxiety. We talked about earlier about the, opioid addiction. We're seeing great benefits with mushrooms, ketamine, as well as ibogaine, or from the iboga plant in some areas, not in the United States, but other areas. Another plant that's been helpful in treating opioid addiction. So this is what I love, just sharing information. I hope I gave you a few new pearls today, and happy to try to answer any questions. But again, if not covered today, always send in your questions to CANNA World Expo, and we love to cover topics and fill in those gaps, because that's what this is all about. So thank you guys for your attention for my mushroom little spiel today.
Thank you. I think Alan has something to add.
Yeah. I have never even tried like the psilocybin type of mushroom. I like most of the other ones in food that you're talking about. What is that experience like for most people? And what benefit would it be? Because I'm one of these kind of people that I don't partake much outside of just, having a beer here and there. Because to be honest with you, I'm for shit on most things. I just can't. I just can't hang. So what is that like?
Okay, so like anything, like any experience, your body will respond on an individual, personalized level, right?
Okay.
I will say that psilocybin and psilocin is a very psychosomatic. Basically, if you're in a good mood, it will help to elevate that good mood. If you're not in a good mood or in a bad space, it may take you down that hole to a little bit of a negative energy space. It's really very emotionally geared. And as we said, this is not every compound out there, not every experience is for everyone. And that's really what I love about personalizing medicine. But when we talk about introducing someone to cannabis or even CBD, what are some of the keys? Start low, go slow. And so what we're seeing now as people start to get more open and interested in psilocybin or psilocin or psychedelic mushrooms is to still start with a microdosing or a very small dose. And that's typically in the 0.1, 0.2 milligrams to 0.4 is per dose. It's a very low dose. And people are surprised at how small amount of this compound that you need. Now, the problem that most people had with their experiences with mushrooms was not necessarily the psilocybin or psilocin. It was the chitin. It was that fibrous outer body that really caused a digestive disturbance, gave them digestive issues and stomach upset. And now they were upset, or they felt bad, or maybe they were anxious because they don't feel good. And now it takes them down that path of not, So the first thing is trust that this is safe. Right? Especially in those low doses. I always want people to understand that this is very safe in these low doses. That's not going to be the problem. So first of all, you're safe. You get it from quality grown stores, but start low. And I've had people do microdosing when you're home, you're not driving anywhere, you're not going anywhere. You put on some good music that you like, and start with a very low dose and just relax. And most people don't even notice much when you're microdosing a very low level. You're not really meant to really notice much. It's working on a much lower, on a smaller level in the system, on a chemical level. If you want, I've had someone do it, say, a microdosing regime of 5 days or 3 days of very low dose, and then, or maybe every other day, and then on a weekend day, they say, okay, I want to take it up a notch, and I'm going to take 1 gram, right? Or I'm going to take, and that's okay. But then now they might have a little bit more visuals. They might see a little bit more, feel a little bit more out of body. And things of that nature. Their sensory experience will be different. This is, again, type of mushroom. There's a type that's known as kind of a penis envy, which is a type of the mushroom that's out there in the psychedelic space, and it's known to be a very potent version. So what someone might get in a different variety might take 0.2 milligrams, of mushrooms and have a low dose. They may take 0.2 of penis envy and actually feel something. So everyone is different. The potency is more of the concentration of the psilocin and psilocybin, the active compounds. Just like you can make a strain of cannabis more potent in THC. So there's different factors there along those lines. But for the most part, low dosing, it's only when someone takes too much, just like they would take too much in an edible for cannabis. Yeah. You're gonna it's just out of your body's zone of comfort. But for the most part, and from the experiences I've had, when people do low doses or microdosing, they just feel better. They feel that the depression starts to fade away. And this is on low doses, so they may not notice it as a pharmacological shift, like, oh, I took it and tomorrow I feel great. But if they take it, they start to feel a little bit more clear. It's like their connections in their brain are starting to get opened up and reconnected a little bit. And that's what really we see a lot in most of the psychedelic category, is in different ways, from DMT to MDMA, it opens up the mind, and it opens pathways. So it's hard to say exactly for one person how they're going to feel. I usually have a good movie or good music. If I'm starting to feel too much in my mind, I just put on a good movie or good music and let myself meditate and relax. And that's really the best way to do it. So.
And so the penis envy one, do you have
It's like green crack in cannabis.
That's
Well,
that's the name, like Maui Wowie is to.
Yeah, in that way, yes. So that's why I'm saying. So again, in different parts of the country right now, we're starting to see decriminalization, even acceptance. Oakland, California, parts of Colorado. We here in Florida are pushing as part of the Mr. Psychedelic Law, and we were getting good feedback that some towns, Hallandale and near Hollywood and start near Broward County or Fort Lauderdale, are open to decriminalizing and allow the legalization of psilocybin mushrooms. So this is going to happen, and there's going to be a movement, especially as the research keeps coming about and the safety profiles still show it's safe. Just again, responsible use is with anything, in any kind of medicine or anything substances.
I was just curious because with a name like that, I was just concerned if Dino and I had some of those mushrooms. How long would we have our pants down and looking at each other and going
like a chicken?
Going, I envy you. I envy what you have. And then he would go, I envy what you have, back and forth.
And now if that's in your mindset,
that's what I was worried about.
I don't think that's going to be a concern, but then again, I don't know you two gentlemen that well, so you never know. But the idea is that no, it's not a concern there. But it is something that I laugh to when I try to recommend. Oh, I have a variety of mushrooms, or
hey, mom.
But no, in general, I'm sure they could come up with better names, and I'm sure they will, more scientific, ratios, percentages. And I want to say that delivery system is becoming that part, and I'll wrap up with this in a conversation part, because I'm always about formulation and products and delivery systems. That now we're seeing nasal spray, so that you don't have to go through the the psilocybin and the active compounds, so it absorbs quickly without going through the digestive tract and being digested and processed by the liver, and also having to break down that chitin. We're seeing a few other types of those delivery systems starting to come about. Sublingual oral strips for some of these are being considered as well, like the Listerine kind of strips. So we'll see this, just like the cannabis industry. You'll start to see an improved quality, hopefully, better delivery systems, better in the measuring or meter dosing of how to get people to take it. And you have a lot more health practitioners, especially the ones in the psychotherapy, mental health aspect of it, starting to get training and learning more on how to incorporate this psychedelic therapy as part of their treatment modalities in a very safe but medically oriented way. And that to me is key.
Well, weren't they doing that originally with MDMA? I mean, originally, I remember when MDMA was basically a prescription over-the-counter type deal. Folks that were having stress. And then all of a sudden it became like the fun party drug. And Molly got its reputation mainly because it was stepped on so many times, and it wasn't a pure MDMA that originally was over-the-counter. So
it's true.
Swinging back toward better formulations, or I mean, how do we hold folks accountable? Because it's the industry, and like I know, the industry has got questionable oversight. So,
well, I'll leave you with my thought on that. Oh yeah, GHB and MDMA, they were all medically treating. They were used for medicine and treating depression and anxiety, and then abuse occurs. And I would just say this is that unlike the cannabis trying to fall into the regulatory framework of DEA, FDA, and all that stuff, in my opinion, and I know a lot of people out there, and I would say support MAPS and support all these organizations. There's a group out there in England, the Beckley Foundation, has been researching psychedelics for years. This is not new. I love what the Beckley Foundation have done. The key is to look at this as another example of how to free all these natural medicines and these compounds and put our relationships back into the hands of the health professionals that get trained on how to dose this. It's really the black market and the recreational illicit use of these compounds is what drives us down these wrong paths. And that will always be there. It's only in those places in the countries like Portugal that they say, let's decriminalize the drugs and let's help set up better mental health support systems, better treatment modules, cleaner and better qualified, methods of consumption. Like my cousins are younger cousins and grew up in Holland, right, in the Netherlands, and they always used to laugh about cannabis. Oh, you Americans trying to get your cannabis. What about ecstasy? Like you said, the MDMA, the ecstasy days. It was like, oh, well, we could get that, but we have a government area where we can get it tested, and if it tests clean and pure, they'll give it back to us. If it's not, they don't want us to have it because it's in our own best interest, their best interest. Health safety is number one, not ruling, control, and judgment. It's health safety and population safety. And so if we can start to move that move this kind of conversation to where all these should be free, but respectfully managed properly and therapeutically guided. It's so much a better approach, and we just have to keep supporting those organizations that do that and to keep sharing information amongst us all like we are today. It's a community effort. So thank you guys for giving me again a chance to talk and share some insight today.
Thank you, Doc Rob. Yay. Okay, hopefully Doc Rob is on the East Coast of the United States, and we're on the West Coast. So he's a few hours ahead of us, and hopefully he can join us after Dr. Beauty presents and answer any questions anybody has about functional mushrooms. Doc Rob, thank you. It's always a pleasure. You rocked it.